Hey everyone, welcome to another sit down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. And today is kind of like part two of the review on the Lansky movie. Normally we do that in one day, Mob Movie Monday. But we did something a little special this past Monday. We had Meyer Lansky II, Meyer Lansky's grandson, that reviewed the film with me. He's a friend. He lives in Vegas. I know him for a couple of years now. Great guy. And so we kind of broke down and reviewed the movie together. I thought it was very interesting. Obviously, this was his grandfather, and he knew him fairly well. So he was able to tell us some things about the movie that he thought were factual and those that weren't part of the true story. But it was really good. And we continue our discussion with him today. So that's what's coming up next. I want to thank everybody. We just hit 600,000 subscribers. We did it in a year. Thanks to all of you. Listen, there's a lot of content on YouTube. I say it all the time. The fact that you tune in to mine, we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And we're heading towards that million mark. Who knows? We don't take anything for granted, but we try our best to keep providing good content, keep providing some messages along with the content, some stories, some of the things that we do. And obviously, most of you are enjoying it. So again, thank you for tuning in. MichaelFranzese.com. Tune into that. A lot of new crew members are coming on board. We've been doing these live sit-downs, I would say. We're going to do one coming up soon. You want to be part of this crew? A lot of benefits, a lot of things that we're doing for the benefit and encouragement of others. It's a great network. You're going to enjoy it. So again, MichaelFranzese.com. So with that, here's my new guest for the new sit-down, Meyer Lansky II.
Hi, Mike.
Meyer.
How are you?
You're looking younger. What's going on with you?
Well, I'm going to be 64 next month, but I had an unstressful life, I guess.
An unstressful life? What's that? It's funny. I went to see a doctor once, and I had this thing where I forget what you call it, where you lose some, your beard a little bit in spots. So it was a couple of years back. The doctor said to me, "Do you have a lot of stress?" And I said, "Well, what is stress? I don't know. I mean, this is the way I've lived my whole life. I probably wouldn't live right without stress. Who knows?"
Yeah.
But anyway, it's worked well for you. You look great.
Well, thank you.
Things in Vegas are good.
Things are good. Little like you say, about a year. I think things maybe will take form.
Yeah, I know I was telling you, Dean over at the Mosaic, he calls me twice a week. "Mike, bring the show back. Everybody's asking for it." I says, "When you bring paying customers in and I can see that and prove that, I'll bring the show back."
Yeah, no, it's a little ways out, I think.
Yeah.
A lot better than it was, but we have a way to go.
We got a way to go. Yeah. Good. And everybody, the family's good?
Yes,
everybody's all right?
Doing very well.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so let me tell you what, you saw the movie, right?
Yes, I've seen it 3 times. I think the third time it kind of grew on me. My first reaction was different, of course, than the third. And I've read and seen a lot of the reviews, so it's sunk in now.
Okay. Well, here's what I'd like to do.
Sure.
We'll talk about the movie. I do these Mob Movie Mondays where we kind of review the movie. So we'll talk about the movie. I want to get your overall sense, your general sense of it. And then after that, I'd just like to get into some personal stuff about you and your grandfather, as much as you're willing to tell. Anything you don't want, even if you say something and you say, "Hey, Mike, I don't want that," we'll edit it out. You have nothing to worry about with respect to that. So anything you're not comfortable with, you don't want to talk about, you don't want to answer, you just tell me, "Mike, I'd rather not," and we got it. No problem.
Okay.
Okay? And we should be maybe a little over an hour, if that much. All right?
That's fine.
So, Meyer, good to see you again. It's been a while. You were a great customer when we had a mob story over in Vegas. I know you loved the show. At least you said you did, right?
I love the show. I love everything mob-related in Las Vegas. I can proudly say I'm the only kid that's here in town. There are others around the country, but I love being here. And now we have Bugsy and Myers at the Flamingo that opened about 8 months ago, a tribute steakhouse right on the historical side of the Flamingo.
Have you seen that show?
Well, it's a restaurant. I'm sorry.
Oh, restaurant.
Yeah.
Oh, Bugsy and Meyer.
Bugsy and Meyer
Steakhouse.
Steakhouse. Yeah, they built it about 8 months ago.
Really?
And, it's, on the historical side of the Flamingo Hotel. So that's great. Where Ben Siegel, I hate to use the name Bugsy, but you have to. Ben Siegel and my grandfather were very invested. So,
Now, how's the steak?
Steak's great. Food's fantastic. Vegas has changed a little bit. I mean, cocktails and food have become the new gambling. They're expensive.
Well,
so
yeah.
Things have been burdened somewhat from what it used to be, but that's what it is now. That's fine.
Well, next time I come to Vegas, you're going to be my guest at Bugsy and Meyer Steakhouse. How's that?
Oh, that'd be great.
It'll be fun. I have to tell you, Meyer, I remember that anytime I introduced you during the show, people really loved you. I mean, you got a good round of applause, and people enjoyed the fact that you were in the audience. So, you're just an all-around nice guy. Everything I've ever heard about you, and anybody that I know that knows you has always said great things about you. I have to say
great.
that.
Thank you.
Every Monday, I kind of review a movie. This one's different because your grandfather was the subject of the movie. And obviously, it's somebody that you know and loved and cared about. But I want to get your perspective on the movie really in a general sense. And I know you told me you saw it 3 times, so you're pretty familiar with it. I watched it twice. And I got to say, I really enjoyed it. I really did. I thought Harvey Keitel did a great job. He was, for me, the focus of the movie. I thought he did a great job. What do you think?
That's what attracted to me the most was the trailer when I initially saw it. I didn't expect the movie actually to see the daylight. We thought for a while, I heard about it 3 years ago, and I said, a friend of mine said maybe not. He hasn't done a movie before, so we'll see. But when I saw the trailer, that actually popped out to me is I didn't know any more about it than anybody else. I was very impressed. It sounded exactly. He had the part down as far as when I heard when he was talking to David Stone, who was a fictional character played by Sam Worthington. I don't want anything in that book till it sounded exactly like him. I was highly impressed. Harvey is Jewish. He is about the same age as my grandfather at the end of his life. And boy, he had that down real well. So I thought I was listening to my grandfather, to be honest with you, especially in the deli, because we were always in a deli when I saw him in Miami Beach every year. So
the one thing I noticed, they did portray him in the movie as being pretty cold-hearted. I thought that role, he was pretty cold throughout the film. Is that how you saw him?
He was just the opposite. Of course, there's a lot of artistic license with most movies. Today, it's a little more than that. That didn't really set well with me. No, that wasn't him at all. He was very helpful to people. A lot of those guys were. Mob movie, they expect somebody to be tough and a lot of shootings, and some of that's true. As well as I do, that's not the case always. He was never like that, cold-hearted. He was very big in philanthropy. He helped a lot of people that needed help at the time, especially in Florida back in the 40s. Those little communities had very little money at the time till they came in, and I guess the worst thing you could say, they had illegal gambling, but they also had restaurants. They gave money to the local coffers. After a few years, they were glad to see them. They got great prices for their farm goods, their vegetables, their meat, everything. Everybody benefited. He was very helpful. Yes.
What do you know about the relationship between Benny Siegel and your grandfather? Because they go way back, and in the movie, it portrays Bugsy as kind of the enforcer for your grandfather. Did you see it that way? Did you hear it being that way? Did your grandfather ever talk to you about it?
No, I never actually talked to him about anything to do with his life in that background. What I know from, my father, and I was Millicent Siegel, who was Ben's youngest daughter. She passed away here a few years ago. They lived on Central Park East, the Siegels did, and my dad was on Central Park West. And they all got together all the time. My grandmother and Esther Krakow, who was Ben Siegel's wife, they grew up together. They shopped together. They attended parties and birthdays and all those kind of things. Ben was, yes, in the early days, he definitely was an enforcer for my grandfather. But Ben also had a lot of confidence. He wasn't just one-sided. They always say, "Oh, my grandfather was the accountant." Well, all those guys knew odds. They all were good with accounting. They tagged that to Meyer a lot, but Ben knew odds. He knew finance. My grandfather had to fight at one time also. They never say much about that. I mean, in his younger years, he had to stick up for himself physically, obviously. So
he denied all of that, obviously, whenever he was asked about it. He was really an old-timer in that sense. He never tried to boast or brag about what he had. Everything was low-key at that time, and that's one of the reasons he was able to evade, so many charges. And the government, I know this in my own case, the government likes to embellish somebody's biography, so to speak. I know when I was in the gas business, Meyer, they claimed, there was an article that came out that claimed that I was stealing $2 billion, which was totally false. We weren't stealing $2 billion, maybe $1 billion over a period of time, but not $2 billion, but they always try to make you more important so that when they arrest you, it's a bigger deal for them.
Right.
But quite often they embellish things. I think they did that with your grandfather quite a bit. Let me ask you this. Vegas, the Flamingo, you live there, you know the history. Is there anything you can tell us about, Bugsy Siegel and the formation of the Flamingo that we may not know about? I know your grandfather was certainly involved in that with Siegel.
First of all, let me say this. Ben came after Prohibition, 1933. He went directly to Los Angeles, or Beverly Hills, I should say.
Right.
Be around George Raft, who they grew up with. Ben liked the limelight. I think if he could have, he would have been a movie star, to be honest.
Yes.
He was a good-looking guy, very savvy, described by my father. My dad would, at about 13, when he got home from school, he'd go over to the Siegels. He had his daughters, and they would all mix in together as kids. And he said he'd knock on the door, and the maid would answer, and there'd be Ben in the hallway, primping himself to go out for the day. And he'd go, "Hey, Paul's here." And he described him as a very, energetic, nice guy. You'd never know anything else that he did within his personality. And he'd say, "Hey, Paul, we'll see you later. Enjoy." That was Ben. And he came out to L.A. and his daughters, and they lived in Holmby Hills. He had a couple of homes there, and they went to school. And my grandfather, and Ben were apart at that time, but they kept in touch with each other, and that's the first step. And then he, they were friends throughout their lives all the way to the end. And I'm sure they were in touch, and they were doing business right up to the point where they got involved with the El Cortez. They took that over, and Ben wanted, he had his race wire from that he was promoting out here in Las Vegas, and people were taking advantage of that. And he was doing pretty well, but he couldn't get a foothold with the casino. Now, he did really well within 6-7 months with the Flamingo and the investment they put in, and they sold it back to the original owner, and they went out and he started working with the Billy Wilkerson, taking over the Flamingo. And he wanted to build his own casino. Now, my grandfather told me something years ago. He said, when I was in school and I was interested in the hotel industry at that time, he said, Meyer, it takes a different ability to take over something somebody's already built. It takes something within, inside of you to create your own business and run it. That's a different ability. So I think Ben had never built a casino before. He did well managing one that was previously already built. So, although he did get it up and running, and he did get a profit going before, his end. And I still today, there's nobody will ever know what happened there. But I find it odd that the mob and those guys, because I've met a lot of them, that they would keep giving him money and then say, let's give him money and then we'll get rid of him. It just doesn't make sense to me. Why would they do that?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been portrayed correctly in the movie, especially the movie Bugsy. He didn't build Las Vegas. He didn't create Las Vegas. I think what created Las Vegas or brought attention to Las Vegas was the fact that he was murdered. I think that's what, and the story around it, I think that's what, brought all of the attention to Las Vegas and probably helped it build. This was after his death. But, an interesting fact here, I think I discussed this with you. The second in command at one time over at the Beverly Hills Police Department is a very dear friend of mine. He's now the chief of police over at UCLA. But he brought me into the precinct one day, and he was showing me some of the, the valuables, I would say, that Bugsy had on him when he was murdered. And they showed me his license and, things that he had in his wallet. And they're still there in the Beverly Hills Police Department. It's an unsolved murder. And there's no proof at this point that that was mob related. So, when they talk about your grandfather going to bat for him and him stealing money and this whole thing with Virginia Hill, I don't know if there's any truth to that at all. I never heard that there was truth to that. And my father was around during that time, and people that I knew were around, and they never put their finger on it and said, no, this is exactly what happened. So who knows? There are different theories.
Totally. Too many theories.
Yes.
It's just, it'll never be. I don't know any more than anybody else.
No, it's not going to be solved.
My grandfather, I believe, was, he wasn't an actor. So his feelings when he sent that telegram the next day was, Ben's been murdered. And, he seemed as shocked as anybody else, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't think, it could have been anybody at that point.
I'm glad for all my viewers, we're kind of debunking this whole, everything that you've seen in the movies about the Bugsy Siegel murder and Meyer going to bat for him and this being a mob hit. There's no proof to that.
No proof.
It's all speculation at this point. And like I said, higher up Beverly Hills Police Department, this is an unsolved murder and they don't have any information to point in any direction. They have different theories and that's about it. So for me, it's like the Hoffa murder. Nobody's ever going to find out what really happened. Too much time has passed, and they're just not going to know.
No, and that's good because there's too many theories.
Some things are better left. Just leave it alone. He's gone, and nothing's going to bring him back, and that's the end of that. And if anybody was around at the time, they're not around anymore, so nobody's going to be prosecuted.
Here's the thing: if people did know, like we do know some. We know who killed Jesse James, and a week later, it's like, oh, okay, big deal.
Yeah, big deal, right?
Yes. So this keeps the interest out there, which is great.
I know one thing that I do believe that was really hurtful to your grandfather was the fact that he did support Israel. It's shown like that in the movie. I had heard that he was a supporter. I saw there was one scene in the movie when an emissary from Golda Meir asked for donations to fight off what was happening with the Germans at the time was beginning, and your grandfather did support that effort. Do you know that to be a fact?
Yes, he did. He did support Israel in a lot of ways, philanthropy locally in Miami to, sending guns their way when they needed them. He did a lot for them. Yeah, and they wouldn't give him the law of return. It was kind of interesting. After he was on his deathbed in Miami, my father happened to be there. And my dad had written a letter to the government saying, how, you want what you want from my dad, but then you won't let him be buried. He was pretty mad about that. And I guess a couple of Jewish rabbis came in on his deathbed. And my dad said that he wanted him to leave. You're not going to get him after he's dead if you don't want him when he's alive. In
Israel, there is the law of return that any Jewish person is allowed to return to Israel and stay there through the time that they died so they can be buried there. And in the movie, and I think there is truth to this, your grandfather, to kind of escape investigation, he knew things were getting hot here in the United States. He went to Israel and expected to have their support because of the law of return, number one, and because he was a great supporter when Golda Meir asked him to be. And then the way it's told in the movie, and I think there is truth to this, Golda Meir was looking for help from President Nixon at the time, and Nixon agreed to support Israel only if, or one of the factors would be that your grandfather had to be deported back to the United States for prosecution. And I think that was accurate.
Yeah, that was accurate. Actually, the first time when I was 10, 11 years old, my grandfather would come out to visit. We'd go back there. My parents would explain him as he's a great businessman. And sometimes, so around 1970, he had to leave Israel. And I remember Walter Cronkite every night for about 4 nights saying, Meyer Lansky tried to get off in Venezuela and right back on the plane. And there was about 6 different countries that he tried to get off in. And he ended up back in Miami Beach. And I'm trying to ask my parents, what's going on here? Because I'm about 12. And they said, oh, they do that sometimes. They try to harass people that have money and are known in the public. And, that's when I really got interested in digging deeper to find out what he was about, so.
That's the power of the United States. A little bit of a story. My partner at the time in the gas business, Larry Irizzo, when he was trying to escape prosecution here, he fled to Panama because there was no extradition laws between the United States and Panama at the time. And I said to him, you're crazy. When the United States wants you, they're going to figure out a way to get you. And the FBI actually made a deal with Noriega. They went in the middle of the night and they kidnapped him out of Panama and brought him back to Miami. And who was going to say anything, right? He was illegally deported, but that's the United States. So I'm sure when your grandfather tried to get off at different countries, the U.S. said no. You get him back here.
At the time, they sent Interpol after him.
Yeah.
Ahead of his, so it was really a double burn in a way. But and they followed him all the way to get him, make sure he got back to Miami Beach, which they never got him. He had some stomach pills on him, and they said, "Oh, you're under arrest. These are narcotics."
Yeah, and they charged him with some silly little crimes that never stuck anyway.
Yeah, it was nothing. They never,
I don't know this for a fact, but I don't think your grandfather ever did a day in jail.
Saratoga, but it was just a minor offense for not having acknowledging a license for a liquor license. I think is actually what it was. So he did the time. He just did it with another guy that was up there at the time.
Well, I'll tell you what, I give him a lot of credit for being as involved as he was and never doing a day or really any amount of time at all. And that's part of it. Shows you some of his brilliance and some of the old ways, like Carlo Gambino. They didn't want to be ostentatious. They wanted to stay undercover. The modern day guys in the 80s, I don't have to mention the names. We know who they were. Even myself included, I guess, too much publicity is going to catch up with you at one point in time. And that added to the destruction of our life, without a doubt.
Yeah. Well, if you notice, I've never seen a picture of Ben Siegel and my grandfather together, like, at a birthday party or something like that. Because he knew he stayed away from that type of thing,
Right.
He'd send somebody to pick me up at the airport. He didn't even want it. One time he came to the airport, and ironically, I lost my luggage, went on to somewhere else. And we were in the baggage claim. He says, "We'll put in a claim for $1,000. Did you have anything expensive in there?" I said, "No, not at all." A 16-year-old kid, I'm kind of like overwhelmed with this. And the next day the bag showed up, but he never showed up to even pick me up at the airport.
Really?
Yeah, he'd always keep out of they ran from the cameras. They didn't want their name in the paper.
Exactly.
Same with Jimmy Halo, who a book was just written about him. Jimmy Blue Eyes, who was always around my grandfather every time I was there. And the same way, he said, we wanted to hide. We didn't want anything to do with that,
So let me ask you this, this is a little bit about you personally. I understand that, when you were younger, there was a possible kidnapping attempt on you. Is that correct?
Yes. About I think it was about 69, 70. I was walking to school, and an article had just come out in Reader's Digest about my grandfather having that $300 million. And about a week later, I'm on a bridge where, fortunately I was young and I knew how to get away, but, and there was a white van waiting there painting the curb, and it was fairly early in the morning, and they jumped at me, and the other guy was in the driver's seat, and I just ran. I got lucky. I ran all the way to home to school, and somebody tried to kidnap me. My parents wanted me to change my name. We left for a few weeks just to get out of there. My grandfather was alerted. So that's how that's.
Yeah, and it was around that time that things were happening. I mean, J. Paul Getty, there was a kidnap attempt there. Even Frank Sinatra, there was a kidnap attempt there.
And there was a local man where I was from, the Weyerhaeuser Company, which is a big Northwestern logging company. His son was almost kidnapped at that time. So, yeah, there was a trend going on, definitely. Now, that was a lot of money at that time. I mean, I can understand.
Oh, yeah. Did your parents alert you to that, or was just something on the spot that you just noticed and you just took off?
Yeah, it was just something on the spot that I know. They didn't. It had just come out, the article, and they were kind of reading it. And, no, they didn't say a thing, actually. I don't know. That was just me.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I got lucky.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, your parents did change your name, correct?
We did change my name. Originally my dad wanted to name me after his dad. He did not want me to do that, my grandfather, because of the fact that something like this might happen and other things later in life, And finally my grandpa said, that's fine. Okay. He liked it. He wanted me to be named after him. But yeah, after that type of thing, it was kind of off balance because we changed it a little later. We moved to Southern California in 1973 when my parents divorced. And at that point I was 15. So I think it was more my mom was just had it with everything going on with the Lansky family and name at that time. And she just wanted to get a break from it all. So I said, okay, yeah, I'll change it. I didn't know what I was really doing at that age, but and I changed it back eventually.
You were in your 20s when you changed it back, right?
I was in my 20s. And the reason being I went for a long time is because when we moved to California, nobody knew me as Meyer Lansky. So it was pretty easy. I went to school area. When I moved back to Washington, people knew me as both names or one or the other. And it was just a hassle. I got to change my license, this. And I just put it off for a while, just because I didn't want to do it, But eventually I did. So,
did you ever have any harassment, the law enforcement ever bother you as a result of you being Meyer's grandson?
No, actually, I had a pretty, they admired him. So I didn't have any harassment at all. Being in the casino industry for, 30 years, it was interesting. I mean, people would ask questions about, wow, that's interesting. Tell me about this and that. And where's the 300 million? Did he kill Ben Siegel? All the questions, a lot of them were the same, but nothing bad. No, I never had any bad. Even to this day, I don't. They admired him. So now, I know other kids, obviously that, maybe they didn't get that same treatment. Their grandparents were a little different. So.
Let me ask you this. Godfather 2, Lee Strasberg, he allegedly portrayed your grandfather in the whole Cuba scene. Did you ever talk to your grandfather about that?
But my dad's never, he's 89, by the way, my father, he's never even seen The Godfather. I don't know, that's just his choice. But my grandfather actually called Lee Strasberg when that movie came out.
Oh, did he?
And and he said he did a great job. His wife had answered the phone. He said, I knew right away who it was because he trained for that part. He had a similar voice. And he said, I just wanted to tell Lee you did a fantastic job and thank you. And isn't that funny, that he would do that? That's out of his character, by the way,
Well, I thought Strasberg was great in that role, too. He's number one. Yeah, he was as good as Harvey Keitel in that role. He was great.
He was.
I thought he did a great job.
Yeah.
There's been some controversy about when it was said, but when your grandfather delivered the line, "We're bigger than U.S. steel." I remember Strasberg says that in the movie.
Yes.
Do you think your grandfather actually said that?
Yes, he did, actually. He was at the Balney Hotel. Well, you probably would know this in New York City. And a lot of times he'd stay in hotels if he had to go to even though he lived there, to the doctor the next day. He'd just get somewhere a block away. And that was one of the hotels the FBI came in and agreed to illegally tap certain rooms to do things like this, for mobsters and other people they were curious about, right? And he's watching a show called Open End that was pretty popular in the 70s. And they were talking about the mob versus the American government. And they said something like, the mob dwarfs the power in in the American government. And he said, no, we're bigger than U.S. Steel. And that got picked up on the tape. Of course, they erased all the tapes. I think they reworded it a little bit, but he actually did say that. Yeah, while he was watching TV that night. So.
Well, that's a line that it's one of those lines that I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. That's written in stone in history, and it's a great line. I love it.
It is
really great. Let me ask you: got any funny stories about your grandfather? Any humanizing things? Anything that people may be interested in hearing about him?
Sure, especially now that this movie's out with Harvey Keitel, and these two Jewish kids came in. They were about the same age as me. And I was kind of timid in those days, especially when I was around my grandfather. And they came up to him and said, Mr. Lansky, can we get your autograph? And he looked at him and said, autograph? What did I do? Won an Academy Award? And then he went over and said, no, son, I don't sign autographs. And what's funny is now if Harvey Keitel does win an Academy Award, I'm going to have to say something. I'm going to have to tell this story because this is hilarious. That was like 45 years, 50 years ago.
Well, that was so typical, right?
Oh, yeah, wouldn't that be funny if all of a sudden he did?
Unlike today, everybody be running to sign you. I sign autographs, so I'm asked all the time, but
Oh, no, he went, he was personable though. He went out and he loved Jackie Mason, the comedian. You'd always see him. He'd have a few drinks. People have him as being this, such a straight guy that he never did anything. But, of course, he smoked cigarettes a long time too.
I understood he smoked like 4 packs a day. Is that right?
Well, maybe 2 or 3, but a lot. He went to clubs at night occasionally, and not with me or anything, but he was out. He was out doing things. He's very sociable. All the way up to the end. Golfer. A lot of those guys were in great shape. That's another thing. Ben Siegel was in incredible shape. There was a place in the 40s. I don't know if you would know this in New York. It was called George Brown's Gym, and George Brown was known for all the great boxers at the time coming to his gym. He was Jake LaMotta, Rocky Marciano, Ernest Hemingway fought there. He was actually a sparring partner, and they worked out constantly. And my dad was there, and boxing was a big deal. Lifelong Yankees fan. They go to the games. My dad told me a story once. They were watching a Yankees game years ago, and a man turned around and he said, "Would you boys like a hot dog?" They were about 9 at the time, and it was Al Jolson.
Really? Wow.
My dad said, "Boy, that was a shock," but he says that was funny. He remembers that. But,
wow. So your grandfather was a Yankee fan?
Oh, yeah. He's a big sports fan. They went to all kinds of sports. And they also camped out, if you can believe that, for a guy that's a real city person, if you can imagine that. They went camping. They went hiking. They loved rodeos at Madison Square Garden and, basketball.
So he was a fun-loving guy.
Very fun-loving guy, very athletic.
It's great to hear that because, the way people are portrayed by the media sometimes and in the movies, they're very stiff. They're nothing but gangster. They don't have a real family life. But your grandfather was a fun-loving guy. I can relate to that. My dad, the same thing. He was always portrayed as being this hard-nosed enforcer type of guy. But, my dad was a fun-loving guy, too. I mean, he loved sports, he loved the nightlife, he loved his family. It's a shame that they're not portrayed that way. The media tries to portray them just as all of us, myself even at times. But, it's good to humanize them because that's the reality of it. That's how it was.
The great restaurants they went to the night. Now, my aunt, she was kind of the Paris Hilton of the 40s, but you saw at the Mob Museum, she has a book out she wrote a few years ago. And, she describes going to Denny Moore's, and you'd probably know some of these places. I don't know if they're still around, but the famous restaurants of the old, 40s in New York City. So, and all this, they go to Ruby Foo's, I think it was called. My dad would talk about it. It was a Chinese restaurant on Sunday. They go there to eat every week. And they were out all the time doing things, shows, restaurants. Sports events.
Yeah. No, it's great. Just, on the other side of their lives, it was a normal life. You mentioned the Mob Museum. Obviously, I'm very familiar with that. And Jonathan, and we all know the crew there. I have something called the Inner Circle. It's part of my coaching crew. And we're going to be doing an event. I'm going to be hosting them, I think maybe September, October. So I'd love to have you come down. It'd probably be a couple of hundred of us. I'd love to have you come down and join us and, say hello and meet them. Maybe say a few words would be great.
I would love to. That would be fantastic. Every time I go through there, one of my favorite parts, I've taken people from all over the world, is down where they have the 100 years of noted man. You're one of them. I said, he used to have this show here. Well, I heard of that. A lot of people say, I remember that. And they're asking about you. But I go through all the people and explain it.
I was teasing Jonathan. I think he changed my picture. I said, Jonathan, you found the worst picture of me to put up there.
Yeah.
They changed it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was proud to tell me that. I said, Jonathan, people think that I threatened you to change it. I didn't threaten. No, he was laughing about it. I said, they're going to think I threatened you to change it. But he sent me the one that's a little better, I think. But anyway, so I look forward to it. I'll let you know in advance when it's happening, and love to have you as a guest. Just meet. People would love to meet you, shake your hand, say hello.
Oh, I'd love to. That'd be great. Yeah. Fantastic.
But this was great, Meyer. I really appreciate it, and I think people are going to enjoy it. It'll probably post on Monday, for our Mob Movie Monday. So I'll let you know in advance. I'll send you a text, and we'll run with it.
That sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Anything else you want to say, or?
Other than that, if you could get the gas prices to come down.
I'll tell you what, I wish I was back in the business now, Meyer.
Yeah. Wow.
I'll be honest with you, it's very tempting. But, those were the good old bad days. They're not coming back for me, that's for sure. So what's the price in Vegas?
It's 4,
Yeah, 4.
It's unheard of here.
We're in some places in Beverly Hills, it's $6 a gallon.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure there. Yeah, fine.
Crazy.
Oh, man.
But, I don't want to get into politics.
No, let's not do that.
You know what's happening now.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, this was great, Meyer. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to next time I come into town, I'll give you a call. We'll go for that steak dinner.
And please give my number to the man. So I want to see that Beverly Hills evidence. That would be.
Oh, I will.
Incredible.
When you come into town, let me know. He's a great guy.
He's okay. I'll probably be in the Beverly Hills area, but I'd love to.
And I'll have him. He doesn't work there anymore, but I'll have him set up to where you can go in and look at it.
Oh, great. That's fantastic.
No problem.
Fantastic. Okay. All right. We're good. Thank you so much.
All right, brother. You take care. Soon. God bless. And I'll see you the next time.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye now.
All right. So there you have it. That's probably the best insight you're going to get to Meyer Lansky that you'll ever receive. It's from a family member, somebody that knew him really well. Meyer Lansky II, my friend. And I enjoyed it, and I hope you all enjoyed it also. And you know what? He was a real guy. I told you in that life, there's kind of a separation. The people that are money earners, like Meyer Lansky, brilliant guy, no matter what you say about him. The guy was very, very smart. They called him the accountant, great with numbers, smart guy. And then the guys that, do a lot of the grunt work, I would say. Not putting them down, it's just that's the separation in that life. There really are two distinct platforms, I would say. But anyway, I think you got good insight into Meyer Lansky. Very interesting guy, and I hope you enjoyed it. So that's it for today. How do I always leave you? Be safe, be healthy, God bless, and I'll see you next time.